Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, criminal court, and other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. They are on audio as well. The next installment of Raised by These Wolves, Volume 3, will be coming out in January of 2026. And I'm glad to have Richard Luthmann back on. He was last on season 5, episode 228, where we talked about family court cases and the horrible cancel culture. So I welcome you back, Richard Luthmann. How are you doing today?
Great, Marianne. How are you?
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
we have a lot to go over because we're going to start off
a lot going
talking.
on.
I know. We're going to talk about that really cool mug you have and the mafia.
You want to take? Oh, let me tell you that. This is. I picked this up. I was at the mall. I go to the mall once every 6 months. I enter the mall over the weekend, obviously because it's Christmas time. It's the best time to go. In
Yeah,
case. And but I find this thing. It's like, try me BITCH. I don't know if you could say that on your show. I'm gonna be
right.
a lot today because I don't know what you can say and what you can't. I
I
usually
know.
don't censor, but I love this because I'm getting into so many fights lately. So I guess I'm just gonna drink my mug. I'm gonna drink and people can know exactly how I feel. So
Right. I love
that's
the
what we're gonna.
brass knuckles because we were talking earlier, and then when I was a kid, my mother explained to me what brass knuckles were and what they were used for. My
Yeah,
mother also taught me what Molotov cocktails were, but that's another podcast.
there you go. No, we're talking about that with the mafia, and there's actually a very funny, not funny, but there's a connection between the mafia and family courts, especially in the city of Chicago, right? And the outfit ran Chicago. Al Capone's outfit ran Chicago. And if you wanted to adopt a kid, right, the system before CPS and everything else, and the CPS review of the home and the parents, how you would be reviewed, you would go to the local mafia guy. They had the little office, a little club, wherever they were, and you bring a little brown paper bag. You get the husband and wife come in. We want to adopt the kid. They hand the money over, and then everybody would be taken care of. The alderman would be taken care of. The judge would be taken care of. Everybody would be taken care of. And so, in that way, they regulated, who would be a good parent.
Mhm.
They wanted to make sure that there was no child SEXTRAFFICKING, right? And they
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that they didn't have deviants that were going in to try to adopt children. And if you pass the smell test with these guys, then you're okay. But that's kind of what happened back in the day. They kept the neighborhoods tight. They made sure that none of the crap came in. They even stayed out of the drugs for a very long time. They stayed out of the movement of people for a long time, children especially. And they're not into that, nowadays. Now you got some really crazy people that are doing that.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is you have government relationships in that. So even today, like, and we'll talk because Mike Volpe is in Chicago, my podcast partner on the Unknown podcast. And he talks about the Bierman firm. The funny part about the Bierman firm is that the managing partner there, John Darko, his father was convicted as a member of the outfit, and his grandfather. They have pictures of him with Frank Sinatra. He delivered the 1960 election in Chicago for John Kennedy. Nixon really won Illinois, except there was a lot of malarkey that happened, and the mob actually did that. So that firm and there's a couple other attorneys there that have mafioso lineages or outfit connection lineages. But it's the organized crime is alive and well in the family courts, at least in Chicago and in
Mhm.
many other places that people say. But the funny thing is that I don't know, it's funny, but we talked about a woman who's running for state house in Illinois named Bailey Templeton. And Bailey actually, she was doing investigation and advocacy and journalism. And she put in a FOIA request to find out about the foster care system. She was a foster care child.
Mhm.
And, you find out how many children are missing. That's one of the metrics, in foster care, you get children that go missing in foster care and for
Yeah.
various reasons. And usually you get, the year by year, 1, 2, 4, 3, maybe 6 in a bad year. Well, last year in Illinois, it jumped to like 164. 164 children missing in Illinois foster care. Now, mind you, there's precedent for this. In Georgia, they had a similar situation. And in Maryland, they had one. In California, they had one. And every time it has been somebody on the inside feeding the child SEXTRFFICKING industry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's what this is. That's the really only explanation for that many children going missing. And there's somebody inside CPS. And Illinois has been stonewalling. Pritzker's government has been stonewalling about giving good answers on this issue. And I know we wanted to talk a little bit today about Title IV and how that turbocharges, Title IV-E, especially with the foster care, how that turbocharges this situation. Because you have these foster kids that are treated like inventory, right? And they end up going, place to place. They're not really accounted for. But then if you get somebody who's a criminal on the inside, they're using them truly as inventory. Okay, they're getting paid by the government as bed space or placement space, not even by the government itself, not even CPS, but the CPS contractors. They get paid by how many kids they place, how many this, how many that, how many other things. And it's a perverse incentive. But then they walk them out the door, they keep them drugged for a weekend, and then they use them as toys, SEXTOYS. And you've got to understand the amount of money that people can make doing that. Think about what they do. I'll give you the example with adults. They'll rent a motel, right? Let's say in Miami, they rent a motel and it's got 20 rooms, and they got a woman in each room, and they're continually servicing Johns for an entire weekend. Think about that. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 3 days of that. Just imagine how much money you could make. You go by the hour there, and how many women are there, and they work them for a 16-hour day, right? And then you have John's running in and out and everything. Imagine doing that with children for a weekend. And you have the child drugged, don't know where they are. And this happens all the time. This is going to happen in a few months at the Super Bowl, right? At the Super Bowl, they bring them in, and then that's a huge thing that happens. And then what happens with these kids is after they age out and they turn to be 18, you don't hear about them anymore. Why? Many of them are sold into SEXSLAVERY. They end up in the port in California. They end up in the port of Maryland, the port of Baltimore, and they end up overseas and are SEXSLAVES in foreign countries, in the Middle East, in Asia, and in other places, and their lives are lost. It's a disgraceful thing. But Title IV-D and Title IV-E, Title IV, all this Title IV money is like a trough that's feeding this entire beast, the CPS beast. And so I know we wanted to talk a little bit about that, Tim. That's part of the mechanism about it. And we talked about this. Michael and I have talked about this in our journalism. I've written about this. It's a real problem. We talked to Connie Reguly, and we talked to Terry LaPointe recently, two great advocates about different issues. A whole slew of things. Title IV was one of the issues we spoke about. And I think there's a consensus that Title IV is a problem, that we have to do something about Title IV. What do you think?
I like to see it all go, but it just makes so much money. They're not going to let that go. They're not going to let Title IV B, D, or E go. And E and D kind of work in concert together, but the foster care with the Title IV-E, so that foster care parent gets money. And then the parent that the child is taken away from has to pay Title IV-D, which is child support, and they pay that to the state, the federal incentive.
Yep.
And I had thought that they were paying the Title IV-D to that foster care parent, but that was not the case. It goes right into the federal funding. So this is double dipping, correct? Am I wrong?
But you forget the big one in the middle, right? Let's make a business, Marianne. We're co-executive directors of a new non-for-profit that we've created. And this non-for-profit's there to help children, right? Who doesn't love a non-for-profit to help children? And what do? Well, we give both large donations to Governor J.D. Pritzker's gubernatorial campaign and to the Democratic Party in Illinois. And then, lo and behold, our new non-for-profit gets all of these CPS or DCFS, or depending on where you are, contracts. And we're going to help children by doing foster care placement. And then we turn around and we take, $500,000 salaries, each of us, me and you, because obviously it's hard work to sit around and collect government money and shuffle children around without much oversight. So now DCFS in Illinois doesn't have the direct contact. They gave it out to a third-party contractor. The third contractor kind of is politically insulated, and then they're just hiring people and doing their best efforts type thing, but they're collecting the money.
Mm-hmm.
And the incentive that you and I have from that third party contractor situation is more and more inventory. More kids that go through this, the more money we make, the more money we have to spend on our salaries, for headquarters, to hire staff and everything else. And then you have a little army. So we hire ourselves, 150 workers, to administer this stuff, all with government money. And then the politicians love us because we have a little army of 150 people that we say, okay, we need you to go out there and get people to vote and pull for this candidate. We need to get out there and do that. Get all your families to vote for them. They get this. It's part of political organization. Mm-hmm. And what I just said is replicated not just in Illinois 100 times, and we're talking thousands upon thousands of times in every state of the union because of the title for money, and that's money coming from these programs, and it's like basically quote unquote free money, but at the end of the day, it's taxpayer money. We're the ones paying for it, mm-hmm. and it's creating this, like you said, the perverse incentive. So that's part of the issue there too. Who's overseeing the third party contractors? They're not government, the government contractors, but they're not government. There's a bit of oversight there, but what's the big thing? If there's a problem, they cut off the government contract, right? Unless it's a criminal investigation, we're not going to know anything that's going on. Unless we're talking about criminal stuff, but we have criminality here. It was established in many places, established in Georgia, established in Maryland, established in California, and now Illinois, it smacks of it. So, what do you do in a situation like this? How do you reform something like this? I think that they're drunk with the money. Right. And how do you lead somebody off of that? Do you go cold turkey, or do you try to step it down? What do you do? It's a situation because we saw the analogous situation with Trump when he came in with USAID, right? USAID was funding some crazy stuff, and it was people were what the heck were they doing? They were like the $8 million for transgender people in Bolivia to feel better about it.
Right.
It's like, well, what do you do? There is a lot of that going on with these contracts, but even more so, there's harm to children. There's harm to children, and I think that has to be the North Star in this thing. If this situation is there and it's a feeding trough of lawyers and of court appointeds and of CPS and everybody else mm-hmm. at the expense of the children, that's the problem we have.
And how do you reform corruption? You can't reform corruption.
You have to have people with a set, okay? You have to have prosecutors, and male or female, they can have a set, and that's just it. You have to have people that want to come in and look at the system and say, this is not right, and we're gonna go at it. Now, I hate to say it, the power of deterrence is huge. People don't understand that, the power of deterrence. It used to be back in the day, we had the hook. Remember the hook? They would put somebody up on the hook. That's how they would do the death penalty. They'd hang a high on the hook. Mm-hmm. And when you rode into town and you saw the body on the hook, I'm not going to mess around here. Right. Well, that's really all they need to do. You're going to get a couple of the most egregious ones, the ones that are hurting children, hurting families. And you put a couple of them on the hook, and then everything else will start to fall into line. But you need a prosecutorial body. You need government to work, okay, executive branch to work. Instead of like we're seeing right now in Illinois, they're stonewalling. They're not answering FOIA requests. They're double speaking around them. They're not. California. I just saw Julie Holmberg, who's a journalist that we know. She got something like $130,000 for a simple FOIA request. You got these governments stonewalling, and that's not what we ask for. It's almost as if the government exists to feed a certain class of people, right. And then the rest of us are out in the cold, and we're left to fend for ourselves. And something has to be done.
Well, definitely. I had made contact with Lee Grenade in South Carolina, and she was wondering if I could get present a FOIA request to SLED, and they just brushed me off.
It's out of control.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about journalism, and anybody who's practiced journalism, and most people who are readers of journalism, of investigative work, of like ProPublica, stuff that me and Mike do, stuff that you do, stuff that Julie does, stuff that a bunch of other people do. We get maybe, 1/10 of 1% of the stuff that's out there. Mm-hmm. And from that, we could make, waves. They could make bombshell stories. We don't get a lot of transparency from our government. Most of it is hidden. When you get stuff, a lot of times it's a source, it's a leak, it's big stuff. But a lot of this is happening in the shadows, and people don't understand the full importance transparency has. Sunlight and deterrence are two of the biggest weapons that we have, in the mass media as well to get the story out there. So, but we have that, and so Title IV, and we talked about Connie regularly.
Right.
Connie is different than a lot of other people. I know, you and some others like Volpe abolish the whole thing, abolish CPS, abolish the system, cut off the money, and then you have Connie, who you said it. People think Connie's the problem because she's complicit with them and she wants to work with them, but I think Connie's the type, another type of reformer that is needed in family court because she understands the pragmatic way. It's good to be an idealist and say, okay, this is wrong, and I have my moral line. I'm not crossing it, and this is wrong. Get rid of it. Let's make something that's morally acceptable. Connie's like, let's fix it. And Terry, to a certain extent, too. She's running for Congress now in Alabama. We're pragmatists, and that's the truly American way. The truly American philosophy is pragmatism. If it works, let's do it. That's how it is. And I think there's something to be said about trying to get this system, moving towards something closer to something that's palatable. Now, why there's no political will when you have missing children, 167 missing children in foster care, that's beyond me. Why the U.S. attorney isn't involved? Why the state attorney general isn't involved? The governor stops what the heck he's doing with his pageantry and his political theater, fighting Trump. Okay, you guys can fight all you want, but stop. This is about the kids. Everybody should be able to come together about the kids. I just don't understand how that doesn't happen all across the country. But when you do understand because there's a certain group of people that are making a lot of money off of this. And that's what it comes down to.
Right. Also in Minnesota, they had 30 kids missing. And that was on December 4th, 2025. There was an article written on that.
Yeah.
Where'd they go?
How do you get a number like that? And Illinois is a big state, so 160 is a huge number statewide. We're talking that there's a lot of this going on. And 30 kids missing is huge. And in my mind, anything like that is inventory. At a certain point, it becomes the children are being treated as inventory. And we know what's happening when that happens. It's a disgrace. So.
It's not going to stop anytime soon because I just don't know. I just don't know how they're going to fix this.
No, it's not. And the perverse monetary incentive is we have to look at trimming the fat. We have to look at maybe doing some type of USA type, Doge. Doge, they moved it over now. It's disbanded, but it's part of another agency. Maybe something for family court directly in Title IV money, VAWA money, Violence Against Women Act, because we have a heck of a country. We have a heck of a governmental system, which is a great thing in that we have a federalism and we have the rights of the states to do what they want, almost like laboratories. It's a laboratory theory of constitutional law, that every state is free to do what they think is best for them, what the people believe is best for them. But the problem becomes the states where there's the most problems, they're following along the same path. They have lawyers that are ginning up acrimony, right? They're ginning up acrimony in litigation. So Violence Against Women Act, like, for example, feeds into that. You have a woman who's, that goes into the lawyer's office. And, well, did your husband ever put his hands on you? Like, well, no. So, well, if your husband did put hands on you, we could claim that he's an abuser and this is domestic violence, and you could, there's Violence Against Women Act money, and there's this and there's that, and these protections. Oh, yes, he beat me. He was terrible. He beat me terribly. And you make these allegations, and then it's like it really devalues and hurts the intent of the legislation, which is to protect battered individuals, both women and men. There could be battered men too, that are actually victims of real violence. And so you have this lawyer manufactured acrimony. And that's one of the big problems. One of the largest lobby at any time in Washington is the insurance lobby. Right after that, closely number two is the trial lawyers. You got oil, you got insurance, you got trial lawyers. Those are the big three, ones that clog everything up. And so when you're going against the trial lawyers lobby, it becomes a problem. Anything you want to do to take food out of lawyers' mouths is a problem. Anything you want to do that might create some type of potential liability on a lawyer becomes a problem.
Hmm.
So that's an issue. And so a lot of this Title IV stuff and other federal monies is related to ginned up issues. And certain states have rules that feed into that.
Hmm.
You have to allege this and that. You have to do that. You have to claim this. And everybody does. And there's no penalty for false claims. What woman have you heard that walked in and said, my husband beat me, my husband this, my husband that, has been proven, it's proven to be false, even if it's proven to be false, is prosecuted or anything happens. It rarely ever happens. And I mean, the other way for men too. What man walks in and makes a false allegation in family court, overblown claim, and there's any consequences. And
Never.
that's the problem. That's the problem. It's because the lawyers love it. It's a
Right.
moneymaker for the lawyers. The more issues, the more acrimony, the more that happens. So
Right. I think Connie and I were even talking about that there's just no penalty for false accusations.
yeah,
That
it's
has
called
to
the
be,
straight. It's called the straight face rule. Really, that's what it's called. If you can say it with a straight face, you can say it. That's what it
yeah,
comes down.
yeah.
You can say it with a straight face. So I don't know.
And they're
It's
getting away with it.
hard.
It's not ending.
And I
Oh,
argue with Volpe about this all the time about 50-50. And I think that, I'm a proponent of 50-50. Volpe is against 50-50 totally. But I'm a proponent of it as an adjudicative rule where it's the presumption. And if you show evidence that it shouldn't be the presumption, then you get off of it. But I think in 95% of the cases, 50-50 is the way to go because, it's always better for a child to have two parents in their life if possible. It's always, it cuts down on the acrimony, cuts down on the manufactured issues, the gotcha type stuff,
right.
the legal acrimony. And then, and the other part about it is, we've seen this with reform. We've seen a lot of reform going on lately. Bandy Lee's been doing great stuff, and she had a conference last month, and she brought in Mark Fincham and Rachel Keschel, Lisa Fink from Arizona. She brought in people from other places, Tabby Nichols from Idaho,
Mm.
that have been doing what are called ad hoc committees, and they've been hearing from parents and victims of the family courts, of CPS, and taking testimony, hearing from experts. And Fincham is big where he says this. He says, look, when you go to court, you expect two things, and really only two things: a determination on the property and a determination on the custody. That's what family courts should be doing, making two determinations. They're not trying to fix people. The problem with our family court structure today is they're trying to fix people, trying to get an appointment into an appointment, into another appointment, into another appointment,
Hmm.
and it becomes a crazy feeding trough. And that's part of the problem. And we have
Right.
good reformers both in that ad hoc structure. We also talked to Gil Gatch down in South Carolina. Gil's a family lawyer. He's actually a minister, Georgetown Law, and then he opened up a practice. And he actually has takes the opposite view on family court reform. And he thinks that the ad hoc committees, they waste a little bit too much time. And you can go right to a subcommittee, a standing subcommittee on legislation if you're clear on what the legislation is to change it. So he likes that. But he's a lawyer, so it's a little bit different, I think, than he's intimately familiar with the problems as a family law attorney. So I think that for a guy like him, that's the right way to go. For people that are understanding the process, that might be the way to go.
Hmm.
By and large, I think that this ad hoc committee is the way to go. These commissions, I think they should be set up all over the country.
Hmm.
I know Florida did one a few years ago when they had to do their law reform that passed a couple of years ago. A friend of mine who's a New York City councilman named Frank Morano, he just put in legislation in the New York City Council to study Article 81 guardianship, which is like guardianships and conservatorships. So that's a related issue of family law.
Oh, yeah.
But these things should really be studied. Get public comment and get people in there to tell what's gone wrong, tell their horror stories, but also tell what's happening, what's doing good. Tell what worked, and let's figure out, get some good ideas there so we can craft a better system. There's nobody that's going to say that the family court system is not broken,
Hmm.
unless they're saying it they're staying with a barely straight face because they're a lawyer or a contractor, a therapist, somebody that's collecting off that truck. They're the only ones that think the system is working because their
Right.
bank account is telling them. But nobody that's a consumer of the family court system thinks that the family court system is working. When you step into family court, you've already lost. Nobody who walks into those doors, like the gates of hell.
Oh,
You don't
yeah.
walk into the gates of hell, you're not a winner.
Right. 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 And you've got these third-party parasites, the guardian ad litems, these custody evaluators. They are just muddying the waters. I think they should just get rid of these individuals that are fueling the flames and dragging out the cases.
Well, one of the big issues, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is guardian ad litem immunity. Let's get rid of
Oh,
it.
get rid of
That's
it.
an easy thing to do. Strip guardian ad litem immunity. And the problem they have is it's quasi judicial immunity because back in the day, before divorce became an industry, before Kramer versus Kramer, and divorce became big thing, big business for lawyers, you had a divorce, and it was a large property issue usually, and maybe custody was part of it, but the custody was used kind of to get to the property. But think back in the 50s. You're in the middle of I don't know, pick a place, Missouri, and you have a wealthy family at that point. Let's say they're worth $1 million in 1950. Okay, that's a lot of money back then. And so, what would the judge do? The judge would appoint a special master, right? And the special
Yep.
master would be the eyes and ears of the court. And the special master would make a determination as to the property issues and also write a report, about the custody and everything else and hand it to the judge. And the judge would read it and the judge would take it under advisement. And then that's how the cases would progress with a special master. The guardian ad litem grew out of that. Now, in that first instance, a special master is the eyes and ears of the court, the hand of the court. So that person should be entitled to immunity if all they're doing is a fact-finding mission for the judge. The judge hasn't had the time to do that. The judge has other cases to deal with. So you have somebody that comes in, maybe another attorney, maybe somebody else that comes in and tells the judge, this is what's going on in the case. I had a chance to get into the facts. Here's what you need to know, and here's the issues, and here's what you need to make your determination. We are so far removed of today's guardian ad litem system from how it started, to the extent that I don't think that immunity is any longer appropriate. You have these guardian ad litems that are teaming up with the counsel, certain counsel, and other counsel, and it's a revolving door. In one case, they're the attorney for the litigant. In the next case, they're the guardian ad litem. They're colluding. They're playing ball. They're horse trading cases together.
Mm.
And so get rid of immunity. If they're going to mess up, even if it's a gross negligence standard, right? Even if it's a gross where you have to do something really, really bad, even if it's a gross thing, put it on the books. Get rid of guardian ad litem immunity. Get rid of the court-appointed immunity, okay? Because the system is no longer one that the person is the eyes and ears of the court. They come on, and it's too much of a cabal. It's too much of a cartel. It's the way to bust the cartel. Make them have liability if they do something wrong. Then everybody will act with a little more prudence. That's my view. But how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And the judges have got to start looking at evidence. The evidence has got to stop being suppressed, even by the clerks. The clerks may withhold evidence from the judge. And Julie Holborn and I talked about that yesterday. And in fact, even in my federal court case, when I got my case moved from the state court to the federal court, I asked the judge, so all my exhibits that I gave these attorneys, are they all going to go to federal court automatically? And she said, yes, that's what they're supposed to do. Oh no, 3 of them got withheld and they were. So then I had to, take these exhibits that I had physically and send them over to federal court myself.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is something. They play the game. They're gonna try and do it. It's corruption. That's just how it is. But I'll tell you what. You said federal court. I'm doing something with Rabbi Jacob Belinsky out in
Oh,
Colorado.
yes.
He had a big win in the 10th Circuit, and he's actually got some more stuff that just came down this last week. I'm going to be writing up some articles about him and his case. He's really fighting well, and there are 2 doctrines. If you have to go to federal court, there are 2 doctrines that everybody has to worry about. It's called the Rooker-Feldman doctrine and the
Yep.
Younger extension. doctrine. And
Oh,
what
the
those
what? I'm
doctrines
sorry.
say, younger abstention doctrine. And what those two doctrines say in a nutshell is that the federal courts don't want to hear family court issues. And the way that the Constitution is set up, that there are reserved rights to the states. And the states handle their own criminal law, their own real property law, the health, morals, and welfare of their citizens. That includes the family courts. So part of our federalism is, we're just not going to go there. The federal courts will not go there based under the Rooker-Feldman doctrine and the Younger abstention doctrine. So that means they're going to abstain. There's a case called Younger, and it says we're going to abstain from these issues of deciding them. How you get around those is you have to show clear classic corruption. Corruption does not insulate somebody. So you have the issues about judicial immunity, and those are very nuanced. But by and large, if there's corruption, you get around the Rooker-Feldman issues. And what Rabbi Belinsky has done in his cases, he actually getting to discovery. Most of the cases against family court figures get dismissed in federal court on those two grounds. And he actually had it survive, and he's in discovery now. So we're going to be reporting on some of that the next few days. And then another thing, what was I thinking about the courts is, the one thing that just came down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. One of the justices on the Supreme Court there basically said that there's terrible, terrible corruption going on in Baton Rouge and a Louisiana family court. And that's pretty much happened in the past week. And I'm working on something on that as well with Amy Duncan, who's with one of the warriors in the Family Court Fraud Warrior Project. She gave me some information on that. And Amy works with Dave Weigel and a lot of the other warriors there to do some great work, helping parents and advocacy and everything else, court watching. And so we're going to be covering some of that a little bit. But I'll tell you, because I brought up Dave Weigel, our friend Dave, and Dave's been on your show. And I don't know if you know about what happened with Dave, but, he's putting himself out there like he does. He takes a lot of crap from a lot of people. And he picked up a couple of real grifters, a Bonnie and Clyde couple called Jason and Erin Samaritano. And these are grifters from New Jersey. And I don't have to say that they're grifters. That's my opinion. But you decide for yourself. I put out a piece the other day where I put in Jason Samaritano's rap sheet, which was literally a mile long. We're talking 25 plus arrests. This guy has convictions for larceny, grand larceny, theft, all this type of stuff. He's a career criminal, as said by Judge Kristen Dorigo, a New Jersey Superior Court judge. Not me. I'm not saying he's a career criminal. The judge said he's a career criminal. He flunked out of drug treatment. He had every chance in the world. And what happens? His Bonnie and Clyde wife. I don't know if it's Bonnie and Clyde type situation, because she does have criminal, history in that she has stalking and harassment charges and everything else. But I don't know if it's that, or it could be Munchausen by proxy, where she's under the control of this guy. I don't know, that happens a lot too, where women are taken control of by an abusive man. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm not going to play pop psychiatrist either. But I'm just throwing out there, those are possible issues. But these two people went after Dave Weigel because they had started their own family court grift. And they were trying to claim that they were family court advocates, but they were fake family court advocates. They had no ability to do family court advocacy. Jason Samaritano, all he knows how to do is rob people. So it was a situation where I think he was trying to either create a cult or create a con or create something else, in my opinion. But it didn't pass the smell test. And Dave Weigel called them out on this. And what did they do? They concocted a harassment criminal charge against Dave Weigel. So think about this. You go and advocate for families. You're a watchdog. You have a 501c3 that you've created. You go out there. You organize thousands of people. You go to as a court watcher. You drive hours to go to Connecticut, to go to upstate New York, to go to New Jersey, to go down as far as Maryland, to go all these places around from New York centered, and you have court watchers, okay?
Yeah.
And you have resources, and you have support group, you have education, right? And this woman goes and says, Dave Weigel harassed me. And now, I think it's in Ocean County down in Mount Laurel. Who is the detective down there that, is a Keystone cop? That, what the heck is going on with these people? First thing you do when somebody makes a complaint, you say, okay, let me get the facts. Who's the quote unquote victim, and who's the quote unquote perpetrator. And when you see that the quote unquote victim is the Samaritanos with the rap sheet a mile long, you kind of pull back a little bit. Then you look at who the victim is or the perpetrator is. A guy who's been on Wall Street for 30 years, one of the top fixed income gurus that there are, that is, top fiduciary, never had a problem, Columbia Business School, all this other stuff. Come on, you got to give me a break. Who are these rinky-dink cops? And we found out that Samaritano, right? Their son just became a cop.
Oh, typical,
So
typical.
Like, I had the flash. Remember The Departed with Jack Nicholson and Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio, where Nicholson puts his kid, Matt Damon, and gets him into the police. So he's got a guy in the state police. It's the same thing. It's like the mob boss has somebody in the police. It's a little bit out of control at this point. What this case is doing. Now, hopefully, the municipal court down there, Ocean County, figures out what's going on. But this is the type of stuff. You have these very, very bad people that try to pretend they're family court advocates. And I know they said something about you. Didn't they say something about you, Marion?
I got notice of it, I think it was last summer, that they had made comments about me. I don't know why, because I never really even knew of them. They just started commenting on me.
You were talking to Dave Weigel, and then they thought they could attack you, right?
Yeah, right.
They're bullies. That's what bullies do. These are bad bullies because they're criminal bullies. That's what they do. They go out there and they're career criminals. That's what Judge DeRigo said. Jason Samaritano is a career criminal, according to Judge DeRigo in New Jersey Superior Court. So, it is what it is. But hopefully we get this thing turned around. But that's a lot of the problems we see with the courts. We see the courts that they take things at face value, where you got somebody on the inside like Samaritano and his kid, and you had crooked, a crooked cop or a crooked detective. You had crooked people in the courts potentially, and these things happen, and they try to stop good reformers. Now, we've had other reformers out there that, we talked about going like Connie Reguli, and we talked about Terry LaPointe. We talked about other people that are doing great work.
Right.
But then there are other people that are doing very questionable work. I'm going to be as nice as I can when I say this, because Francesca Amato, right, and she has her bill, okay, and there are certain people that like Francesca and like her heart and spirit, but her bill is really I like to call it trauma, P-O-R-N, trauma, P-O-R-N. That's what it is.
But is it a bill yet?
It's not a bill. It's 94 pages, and she copyrights it. She pays you to have to see it, and she claimed that she was introducing it to Congress. She tried to introduce it during a shutdown in a library room. Okay, she's claiming that Senator Grassley is behind it, and Senator Grassley has no idea who she is. It doesn't read like a bill. Bills are written in a certain way, and it's not there. I've written on this. I've written several articles on this, and then I raised some questions to her about her 501c, and she lost her 501c status for her group a few years ago because she didn't file any tax returns. She never filed tax returns for a 501c, and a 990 is the tax return you file for a 501c, and it's a publicly available document. The 990s are by law publicly available. Never filed it, but what we did find is when the records that she did file, she raised something like $22,000 in 1 year and took $20,000 in fees. So it's a hustle. When it appears to be a hustle, you have to explain yourself. And Francesca doesn't believe she has to explain herself. And so, I'm here. I have no problem with her, but I need her to explain herself. But then she came around and she started, attacking me. I'm a 4th-degree knight of Columbus, and she called me a pedophile. So me and her have a problem now. Yeah, we have a big problem. So.
Well, that's a false accusation. This is where these false accusations fly out of people's mouths.
Well, I'm already suing somebody down in Florida. I live in Florida now. I live in the Fort Myers, Naples area, and in Southwest Florida. And I have a guy, like we talked about him last time, Dinesh Nishirvan, who is the cancel culture scumbag. Basically, he deploys a bot network, AI bots, and simulates outrage. So he picks a person that he believes in his mind deserves quote unquote accountability. And then he goes after them and he makes his followers. He's got over 3 million followers, but a lot of them are simulated bots, and they attack the person. So they inundate their personal phones. They inundate their work phones, their employer, any of their social contacts. And a lot of these people get fired. A lot of these people, are really, really hurt. But then when he finds people that have money, he goes and he sues them. And he's suing a husband and wife couple down here in Florida, plastic surgeon and his wife down here. And it's like out of control. This guy, what he does is, and it's very clear, he has Antifa links. He's an Antifa linked, internet terrorist, basically.
Mm.
He's from Iran. Okay, his mother is an Iranian immigrant. Okay, I'm not even sure that that there's no direct allegiance there still, and that's one thing we're exploring. I already submitted paperwork to Tom Holman to try to take a look at that.
Mm.
But the other part about it is he's getting foreign funding. He's already talked publicly to Scott Dworkin, the Democratic Committee against Donald Trump, as Soros funded. He's got the some of these other large charitables and political groups, the 501c4s and the PACs as well, that he's affiliated with. But he's getting foreign money. So we ask him, where's his money? Is his money coming from Tehran? Is his money coming from Beijing? Coming from Moscow, Pyongyang? Where's the money coming from? And then this guy goes and who does he attack? Like clockwork, he attacks white people. He attacks families. He attacks traditional values. He attacks conservatives. The guy's got Trump derangement syndrome. So if you're MAGA, he attacks. And then he tries to sue you. So like I said with Francesca, she defamed me. Well, this guy defamed me. He called me a pedophile. He called me a child stalker. And I'm suing the shit out of him in the court. SHIT. Sorry about that.
Oh,
I'm suing the SHIT out of him in the federal court in the Middle District of Florida, because you can't go around and baselessly call somebody that. And part of what I do as a journalist is I'm not there to try to protect children. The whole first part of the show we talked about the Trafficking and the foster care and everything else. And part of it's my faith, and I'm a devout Roman Catholic, Knight of Columbus. That stuff is, and this guy is he's here to do subversion. So I stand up to these cancel culture bullies. If anybody out there is facing a cancel culture bully, a guy like Dinesh Nishirvan, I'm also facing another guy called Jeremy Hales, who's another bully who's up in northern Florida, and he's got his own little ecosystem in place, and he's a failed preacher. And so what he does is now he televangelizes on YouTube and robs people out of money, basically. He tries to bilk them, in my opinion, out of money, through his, creative begging and his content creation. But he's using the courts as content creation. And we're going to, make sure that he's taught a lesson as well. Oh. So that case is ongoing as well. And Mike Volpe and I are doing a deep dive investigation on that. So, cancel culture is still a big part of what I do. But going back to, these advocates, these bad advocates, the only way to stop the bad advocates is to call them out. And if you have to, what a bully, it's the same thing as a playground, right? It's the same thing as a bully. You saw the Ronald Reagan movie, right? The Reagan movie that just came out last year. What's his name? Reagan comes home, little Dutch, they call him Dutch. Mm-hmm. And the bullies are after him. And as mom says about it, they're bullies. The only way you get rid of a bully is you face him, you got to punch him in the nose. Mm-hmm. And little Dutch Reagan goes out there and he beat up the bullies, and they never dealt with them ever again. They never bothered with them ever again. And that's what you got to do kind of with these bullies. They're going to come in there. They come in. They're predators in the sense of the word. The dictionary definition, the Merriam-Webster definition, is one who exploits another for gain, for pecuniary gain, for monetary gain, for some type of gain. And that's what these people are doing. They're not trying to help. They're trying to exploit. This is a form of exploitation. And so that's what bullies do. So you got to go after the bullies. That's what I do. That's part of what I do in my journalism and in my life. I go after these bullies. So that's part of the issue. And when you see these fake advocates, they're the ones that are the problems. And I know there are a lot of advocates that are good advocates, I know we talk to a lot of people. But, the point about this is transparency. Everybody has to talk about transparency. Now, I have a past, and everybody knows my past. But, at the end of the day, you come and ask me, what do you want to know about it, and I'll go through it with you. And so I've written stories about it. I have a plethora of stories about Rich Luthmann and what's going on. And I will say, for the record here, I spoke with confidants of the president about a pardon. So I'm working towards that myself on a federal pardon for President Trump. So that may be in the works in the near future. We'll see.
Right.
But
right. Well, I mean, I
That
have a
being said,
past too.
everybody has a past. Past is prologue, though, and that's the point. But that does not absolve people of answering questions, right? And so these advocates come out there and they start creating their groups and their frameworks and everything else. They think they can't answer or don't have to answer questions. Well, all the effective advocates that I've dealt with are an open book. They will tell you, you have a question, I'll talk to you about that.
Right.
All the effective politicians that I've been around, all the good guys and the good girls,
Hmm.
you go and ask them a question, they sit down with you and they'll say, okay, what do you want to ask? I'm an open book. It's when the people have something to hide, it's a problem, and that's just it.
Right, right. Because I put out a TikTok video, I think it was last week or a week and a half ago, saying, I'm here. I'm not affiliated with anyone. I just get the stories out. I'm an investigative journalist. That's all I do and write books. Okay. And that's it. And if anyone has any questions, they can contact me at blah, blah, blah. And I also said, don't believe everything you hear. There's always two sides to the coin. I don't know. And then this goes in with your cancel culture. People readily believe whatever they hear.
Yeah, and they often believe the most salacious story. That's the thing. And Trump says it all the time: the best lies are 90% true.
Yeah,
That's part of what happens too. And so you have a lot of that, especially in today's media. We have a lot of points you don't know what to believe. And that's part of the subversion. If you look at what happened with the Soviets and the subversion program, part of subversion and part of destabilization of a democracy is to make the sources of information so scattered that you don't know what's true anymore. So you can't function as a human being in society and reason for yourself. You
right.
can't collect the facts. You don't know what's a fact. You don't know what's an opinion. You don't know what's true. You don't know what's false. You don't know what they go off of. And that's what we have today. We kind of don't have
Mhm.
what we were. Remember, in many ways, I like the world we're in the sense that we don't have three major news channels anymore. But in a lot of ways, I hate the world we're in because you don't have three major news channels in the sense that there's there's no monopoly on truth anymore. But should there be? Everything should be questioned, yes. But once facts are decided, people want to go back and we're seeing this a lot with the alt right and the alt left.
Mhm.
We see a lot of these influencers and these quote unquote news people that have realized that it's not about truth anymore. It's about outrageousness. And I'll
Mhm.
give one example, and I'll leave it at that. Is Candace Owens.
Mhm.
I used to love Candace Owens, but she's gone off the cliff. The girl has lost her mind, but she's crazy like a fox in the
Mhm.
sense that she knows that she's making money because she's creating drama, she's creating, these stories. But what's going to happen with that?
Yeah.
Are the courts going to rein her in? Is the Macron lawsuit going to be the end of it? Is there going to be a Erica Kirk lawsuit? Is that a way to have longevity in the business? But is she making money hand over fist at this point in media?
Mhm.
Sure, but is it serving the greater purpose? Is it
Mm-mm.
serving truth? I don't think so. So
No, no. Uh, Again, people have to dig into everything themselves. And going back to Louisiana, when I was talking to Julie Holburn yesterday on a podcast, she sent me this article about lawmakers fear DCFS reorganization could cost Louisiana experienced child welfare workers. And that was put out by lailluminator.com.
yeah.
And
Well, her story, Julie, is out of control.
right.
The latest story with Carasso, that crazy judge out in Orange
Yeah.
County.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this
Yeah.
this Carasso is the judge for the Tar Nolan case. Tar
Yes.
Nolan's a disabled mom, and it's been a big press story. Julie Holburn has been covering it. Well, Julie puts in a motion for Carasso to recuse in her own personal case. Julie has her own personal case, where she's fighting for her kids.
Hmm.
And the situation is that Carasso turns around and is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then Julie pulls out the transcripts from the Tar Nolan case where Julie is discussed by name because of her journalism.
Right.
So the standard is appearance of impropriety. How can this woman, Carasso, this judge, think that she can rule fairly on a case involving a journalist that she's trying to exclude from her courtroom that has become a quote unquote gadfly to her and her ability to do what she wants in the shadows. And how can you think that she can dispense justice in her case fairly without retaliation? There's no way, shape, or form it can happen. And this Kid Carrasso is just the bottom of the barrel as it comes. But the problem is Orange County have the bottom of the barrel judges up there.
Right.
One horror story after another, after another, after another. It's out of control.
I mean, even in Erie County, Erie, Pennsylvania, same problems. Can't get a judge recused. There's collusion involved. Judge doesn't want to hear it. So then when you try to recuse them, they all retaliate. It's going on everywhere.
Well, more retaliation we saw up in Kingston recently. This crazy judge, Ricciani, who is the Ricciani up there, she just took the case from Rakoff, the family court judge in Kingston in Ulster County. And first thing she does is she issues listen to this, a blanket order excluding David Weigel as a court watcher from the courthouse. Think about that. You have a blanket order excluding somebody. You think there might be a First Amendment issue there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing she does is an unconstitutional order saying that David Weigel cannot be present in the courthouse, in the courtroom. Now, you can't do that. You have to if you're going to exclude somebody from the courtroom, you have to have cause. You have to do an individualized assessment every time they appear in the courtroom and for every court appearance. You can do that. The judge can say, who's in the courtroom? Why are you here? Why are you here? Okay, we're going to exclude you for these reasons. And you can appeal, but you have to do everything. You cannot, under the Constitution, the First Amendment, and of the New York State law, the Family Court Act, you can't exclude somebody blanketly. You can't say Marianne Petrie is not to set foot in a family court in New York State. You can't do that. That's a prior restraint. It's impossible. Yet we have these judges doing it. So that's another story that we had. Also, another one that we have is in Connecticut, is Paul Boyne. You know the Paul Boyne story, right?
Not aware.
Paul Boyne, and I have the familycourtcircus.com. I write there, one of the editors, and now he was the former editor of the Family Court Circus blog. He is under prosecution in Connecticut for blog posts. He spent 1.5 years in jail in Connecticut in connection with blog posts. He charged him with 18 felonies because of blog posts. There are quote unquote, we call them the hateful eight. There are 8 blog posts that were made to the public, right? And that clearly are constitutionally within the bounds of the Constitution. Do they use, very, very provocative language or bigoted language in certain instances? Yes, they're terrible. I don't endorse the content, but I endorse the right of Paul Boyne to say what he said. And these 8 posts are, quote unquote, the hateful eight. And he sat in jail for 1.5 years, and he's facing, 18 felonies for it. Well, we found out that the entire case is a fraudulent case. It was being run by Joette Katz, who was a former a DCS commissioner, and before that was an associate justice of the Supreme Court. And she was a private citizen, a lawyer at that point, running the prosecution. There's an email that says, for handwritten, speak to Katz only. So they were going back to Joette Katz to direct what was going on with the case, with the prosecution. And then the best part is Boyne is not even in Connecticut. He was in Virginia at the time, right? And they did an illegal search and with warrantless property seizure at his property. They raided his house. There's no warrant. And then the Virginia authorities handed to the Connecticut authorities who were there, at the raid. So there's something called the Silver Platter Doctrine. That violates the Silver Platter Doctrine. This is the Fourth Amendment. For everybody remember, search and seizure. You can't search and seize things in this country without a warrant. Unless there's exigent circumstances or some type of very important thing. But most of the time, the cops that are going to come into your home and arrest you or to search your property or seize your property, the incident to a search, they need a warrant by a judge, right? Now, let's say you have a situation where the Virginia authorities didn't get the warrant, right? And they have all this property, right? They cannot go to Connecticut and get cahoots with Connecticut investigators and tell the Connecticut investigators, hey guys, we can't get Boyne here, but go to Connecticut, ask your judge for a warrant, and we'll hand this stuff over to you. And then they rebaptize it as good evidence. It's not. Once it's bad, they cannot turn evidence over on a silver platter to another sovereign state or the federal government. That's exactly what they did in the Boyd case. They took all this stuff from Virginia that was illegally taken, and then it ended up in the hands of the Connecticut court. So it's a total fruit of the poisonous tree violation. And they've been going at this guy for a couple of years. They've been making his life miserable. I think they know that they can't get a conviction. The case is three quote unquote judges that are the victims. And it happened in, I think, three separate judicial districts in Connecticut. So they're in three different spots. So like, three different counties or three different places. But they all consolidated all into New Haven. Normally, a criminal case, if you have three separate crimes or three separate victims, you have a right to have three separate trials, right? And they never did. They just consolidated the case. Boyd says, "I want separate trials," and they consolidate. It's a harassment show. They're making this guy miserable. He's sitting down. He's elderly now. He's close to 70. He's sitting there with an ankle bracelet on his leg. He's got health conditions. It's causing problems. He might have to lose his leg because of the ankle bracelet. But
and he has to pay on that ankle bracelet.
And they got to pay on the ankle bracelet. They're making his life miserable. And there's government corruption, and there's prosecutorial misconduct. And this is because he was covering family court, the familycourtcircus.com. This is what they do. They go after you. When you cover the family court, you expose them. And it's a real racket, and that's the problem. There needs to be reckoning with these people. That's really what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's sad. You wonder, is this America anymore?
No, out of control. I'll talk about my case. You want to talk about America? Mm-hmm. I got a scumbag prosecutor up in New York City called Michael McMahon, and he's in cahoots with developers with a man named Kevin Barry Love, who's a millionaire real estate developer, and he's married to Camilla Hanks, a city councilwoman up there in New York City, and he put in what's called an I-card. He got his cronies in the NYPD. He complained as a witness. He said that my journalism, he received one of my Substack emails and magically claimed that it was harassment. It was criminal harassment, and that I needed to be arrested on site for a felony. And and you get this, he had received 83 emails prior to that, one email that he received. And the email that was sent wasn't sent by me, it was sent by Substack. And the email was authored by Bandy Lee. Bandy Lee was talking about a corrupt New Jersey judge. So I guess it must have hit too close to home for a corrupt New York Staten Island district attorney and his corrupt judge wife. So I'm facing it too. Everybody's facing this stuff. You get into this stuff long enough, and the machine, they only know one way. They know to attack, and they try to silence and destroy. That's what these people try to do. Look at all the advocates out there that are trying to do good work. Look at Bandy Lee. Bandy Lee is one of the best and brightest in this field for a long time. She's, the UN goes to her and asks her about domestic violence. Okay? The UN, guess what? She's facing a lawsuit from psychopath Christopher Ambrose up in Connecticut. That scumbag is suing, and so is Frank Parlato, who also covers family court stuff. All these psychopaths, they get out there and then they get into the court, and so you pay a price for trying to do the right thing. I have Jill Jones Soderman, who's my friend, who runs the Foundation for the Child Victims of Family Courts, right? She had the police knocking on her door the other day. She's an elderly woman. She goes out there. She tries to help people, educational and this and that, watchdog. She sends letters, and the cops are knocking on her door. You know what? That's what this is. This is a form of harassment. It's a system getting around harassment. Don't get too close. Don't derail our gravy train. That type of thing. It's a disgrace. It really is a disgrace. And Jill has been doing some great stuff. I'll tell you what. She's been fighting tooth and nail for a woman named Tasi Belial, who's an Instagram and a social media influencer, mega influencer. She has millions of followers. And she has her son that was basically taken from her, just recently by a corrupt court orders. She's in Washington State. She has a son that has named Ryder, who has a disease, almost like childhood dementia, where he's terminal. He's going to die, eventually from this. And the care that she needed to give him was basically, hours away. So she'd be driving hours every day in Washington State to get the care that she needed. And she had a scumbag ex-husband, and it was scumbag father of the children, and notices him saying, "Look, I am moving with the children to Ohio. I'm moving to Peninsula, Ohio, Summit, going up, Summit County, Ohio. I'm moving to Summit County, Ohio, and I am going to be 15 minutes from where the child needs the care. A rider can get the care that he needs. Notices him, serves him. 30 days pass, right? What happens? She moves to Ohio.
Mhm.
Okay, great. What happens? Scumbag dad gets scumbag lawyer in Washington. They blew their time under the UCCJEA. That's the uniform jurisdiction for the Family Courts
Right.
Act. It's an act that's nationwide. So Ohio court should have jurisdiction at this point, and because the Washington court said no. What happens? They get an order in Washington with a scumbag judge in Washington signed the order. They bring it to Ohio, right? The Ohio judge turns around and orders the children back to the father, right? Now this child has been taken. He was in the hospital. They put him into DCS custody to take him away from the mother, right? Now they put him in the hospital. Now the father takes him back to Washington State, where he can't get the care that he needs.
Oh.
This kid is terminal. He's got a terminal condition. And I have pictures. I'm going to be publishing an article about this of the father passed out with the kid right there. He's an unfit person. He's got a rap sheet. He's got a violent felonies. He's just a scumbag. And you have a good mother out there that's trying to do the right thing. And Jill is fighting and fighting and fighting for them. And she fights for other families too, as an advocate and providing resources and everything else. We just had a huge win up in Washington, in Alaska,
Mhm.
Alaska, all places. We had the Bartholomew case up there, where the father was abusing the children,
Mhm.
and he was seeking custody. So that case got dismissed. That case
Oh,
got turned
wow.
around. We had another case where Jill did with that I covered with Washington D.C. We had the Scowen case,
Mhm.
which this guy is the chief of staff at DHS. He's your typical deep state beltway nepo baby, and his
Mhm.
dad's a big time developer, and he's the chief of staff at DHS or FEMA. He's a joke. He doesn't know anything about that. I had him sleeping on the job, drunk on the job, everything else, and drunk all the time. We have all these videos. The videos speak for themselves better than I can. And basically, it was a D.C. court, family court, and that case went away because of the journalism and because of the work that Jill had done. She's a good advocate. Now, these are good advocates we're talking about that are out there.
Mhm.
People that can have different feelings about people, but there are the bad advocates too.
Mhm.
But the good advocates are the ones who pay the price.
Mhm.
Everybody who's a good advocate, if you're a bad advocate, if you're a scumbag, I think they see right away that there's nothing to worry about. They're out there doing a grift, and that's what happens. So
Yeah.
that's my piece on that.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you came on and we discussed all this.
Yeah.
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 And I'd like to have you back on, but how can people reach you if there's any questions?
Okay. So my publications are out there. Okay. I am on uh, Substack, Luthmann.substack.com. I'm also on Newsbreak. Okay. You could subscribe to my Substack. You could subscribe on Newsbreak, and then you'll get emails, everything that starts coming out. You can tailor it if you just want the family court stuff. That's great. I write political stuff. I write, cancel culture. I write stuff about New York politics, about Florida, Southwest Florida, where I am, general news. So if you tailor it to what you want. You want to read everything. If you want to read just family court, if you want to read, some of the stuff, you can tailor it there. You get Newsbreak. They can come directly to you. Also, you can come to my websites directly.
Mhm.
TheFamilyCourtCircus.com, right? TheFamilyCourtCircus.com. That's where I have most of the family court stuff posted. I still do other stuff in places, but by and large, most of it's there. And I do it as well as some other writers are on there as well. And then we have New York News Press, so nynewspress.com. That's for New York stories and a lot of political stories go out of there, and other general interest stories, as well as Florida Gulf News. That's flgulfnews.com or flgulf.news. Okay, you can get it on either one of those. You can get whatever you need on that. That's where you can find me. And then you go onto those sites that has my contact details as well. If you have a case, if you have a story, I'll take a look at it. You got to understand that I have a lot of people emailing me all day long with stories about this stuff. There are a lot of good journalists, and I'd love to take a look. And if I can help, I'll help. So that's what I do.
Mhm. And thank you for getting the word out. So I will put this all in the podcast notes, but don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavels, a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Richard Luthmann, for speaking out.
Thank you, Marianne.